Welcome to the Myth and Magic Authors Podcast, folklore and fantasy topics aimed at creative storytellers. To write stories and challenge your brain with exciting ideas, delve into these presentations and reflections. See how fantasy realms are based on actual world history, legend, and lore. Study fairy tales, nature fables, and supernaturalism to engage in a jumble of concepts that will trigger your fancy and get you writing imaginatively. Now, here's your host, Neil Mack.
Today I'm chatting to the hugely talented and utterly adorable fantasy fiction author, Birdy Rivers. Birdy lives with two baby dragons. You'll have to listen to the podcast to find out more about them. And she's also a writer and an editor, and she gives tips on world creation and how to modernize a fairy story. Birdy was born in New Jersey, although now she resides in Georgia with her family. She's been writing since her teens and professionally writing since in her mid-20s. When she isn't writing, she's raising her dragons and spending time with family and friends. Before Birdy became a full-time author and editor, she worked as a medical assistant, and she says her writing has served her well as a therapeutic measure for depression and anxiety. So without further ado, let's go over to Georgia and speak to the author, Birdy Rivers.
Hello. How you doing, all right?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Very good, thank you. It might thunder a little bit here. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you good. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're coming across great. Yeah, they're saying that there might be some thunder later, so just let you know in advance.
Okay, and you might hear my baby dragons in the background, so.
Well, that's not a problem. Yeah, so you're in Georgia, you're Atlanta, are you?
Yes, I'm about an hour south of Atlanta.
Okay, and what's the weather like there?
Very hot and muggy right now. Hot and humid. I think we might actually get some rain later today. Actually, I'm looking at it, it's pretty cloudy, so we'll see. But overall, definitely pretty warm.
Well, it's cool to chat to you. I'm looking forward to having a quick chat about things. But I suppose, first of all, it's a good idea to let me know a little bit about you yourself and tell me about your little dragons, because I'm sure the listeners will love to hear about those.
Alrighty. Well, I have been writing for a really long time, probably since my teens, as like an outlet for my anxiety and depression. And it's always really helped me. And when I got into about college, I really decided, I was like, you know what, I want to do creative writing. Like, this is just very interesting to me. And so I started, writing rough drafts of books and doing things like that. And I ended up being a medical assistant. So I kind of went in the opposite direction of like English and literature, but I had to take basic like English classes, and I loved them. And my professors were always so complimentary of my writing. And that really encouraged me to just keep going forward. So fast forward, several years, and I've written a couple of different books, published a few things. In that time, I moved from New Jersey, where I'm originally from, and then moved to Georgia. My aunt and uncle lived down here, so I was able to move in with them and met my fiance, and that led to having baby dragons. We have identical twin girls named Haley and Zoe.
Haley and Zoe.
Yes, Haley and Zoe, yeah. I didn't want to do matchy-matchy because it's complicated enough with twins, especially them being identical. So the whole matchy-matchy, I was like, not about that. And they are special little baby dragons. They are a special type of identical twin. They were a complete surprise. We had no idea. There's no family history of twins. We weren't using any treatment. It was just, I believe they're called spontaneous twins. So there's actually just a term, just spontaneous. They just happen. And they're a specific type of identical twin that kind of had a high risk pregnancy because of it. And I was put on bed rest at 24 weeks, hospital bed rest at 26 weeks, where they had to be consistently monitored. And then at 29 weeks, Miss Haley's life became compromised. So we had to do an emergency C-section. Right. Both girls were born under 2 pounds. They were like literally the palm of my hand big. Yeah. They spent a couple months in the NICU. And now they are 2.5 years old and really healthy. They have overcome a lot. We have a little bit of delays, like they're not, we're in speech therapy and things like that. But overall, they're healthy, they're thriving. They have been pushing forward to be here and to survive. And they're just little miracles, and we absolutely love them. They are so much fun. It is double the trouble, I will tell you that. Yeah. It's double the love and double the blessings, but it is definitely double the trouble. They're at the age right now where they're figuring out they can work together against mommy and daddy. And so that's provided some fun challenges.
I bet. So that's typical dragons.
Yes, typical dragons. And the reason I call them dragons, people always ask, why do you call them dragons? So when I was pregnant, I had the absolute worst heartburn, just the worst. I could not. And I kept saying, like, I remember being in the hospital and telling the nurses, I'd be like, I feel like I have dragons just breathing fire up my esophagus. Please, can you help me with some kind of medication? Because it was just unbearable. And so then the dragon nickname just kind of stuck. And so it's been really fun. They've kind of adapted to the name, and it's kind of a unique little nickname for them, instead of calling them like monsters or minions, we call them dragons.
So let's talk quickly about your book, Children of the Empire, because that's what I want to kind of focus on in this interview. I know that it shares parallels with fantasy adventure shows like Once Upon a Time, and you've got fairy tale characters in it, like a reluctant Snow White and a evil queen.
There is similar parallels to Once Upon a Time in the sense that it is the retelling of the stories. Yeah. I always loved how Once Upon a Time took these stories and just made them more for adults than children. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love the Disney princess movies. I grew up on them. I'm rewatching them with my girls, which is part of the reason why I was inspired to write this. But they're not adult necessarily friendly, so I just loved that they had taken it and kind of made these fairy tales mature and for an adult audience, and they kind of just incorporated interesting concepts of putting it into our world versus a fantasy world. So there was just a lot of interesting things. So it does kind of share that in the concept that there is a fantasy world that these characters are in. Yeah. When you first start reading the book, it's actually set in a post-apocalyptic world because Snow White is trapped in the curse and she doesn't know she's trapped inside the curse. So the world that she knows is a lie. The concept comes from the idea of, have you ever heard, well, what if you're in a coma and you just don't know it and the life you're living is just a lie? Yeah. So I kind of incorporated that, but instead of a coma, she's under a sleeping curse and she's just reliving her life and she doesn't know it. She's unaware. Because, everyone always talks about the curse of Snow White, but what did she go through in that curse? It's not just a simple, she was under a curse for a little bit. Well, there has to be a little bit more to it than that, right? What did she experience? So the idea that under this curse, she's living in a fake world and the curse is slowly killing her from the inside out. Taking from a mental illness perspective of how depression can eat you out from the inside out. Right. So there's a lot of concepts with that. So there is an evil queen. It is her stepmother. There's a little spoilers there that I don't want to quite give away. So you gotta read the book to find out what those spoilers are, but I promise they're good ones. And so there is an evil queen. She is reigning supreme. Just to give you a background about the world, the empire is comprised of different kingdoms, and she is a ruler of the human kingdom. And so she is just kind of wreaking havoc all over the empire. They're kind of perfect little utopias, kind of no more. And now it's up to Snow White's Prince Charming to go and save her from this curse, pull her out of it, and so that she can go fight her evil stepmother. So it is definitely a very much retelling of the stories that you know.
Yeah. I suppose Snow White is such a great story because it has so many dimensions to it, and I suppose what you are doing is you pulled some of the most interesting ones, you really yanked at them or poked at them.
Exactly.
What happened. And I think that's why it's survived so long, because it's probably older than the Grimm brothers. They only went to collect it, didn't they?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, fairy tales themselves are, I mean, just the myths. I don't know if you've ever watched that show Lore on Amazon, but they explore different myths, legends, things like that. And it's just so interesting to see where these fairy tales come from, the concepts of werewolves and vampires and all these things that live in the fantasy paranormal worlds. They're all kind of somewhat based off of our own world in some way, shape, or form. And so fairy tales themselves, I know traditionally we're used to teach children lessons, very, Little Red Riding Hood, don't talk to strangers, basically, things like that. But there's also an element there that could be used for so much more than just, hey, don't talk to strangers. These stories are interesting. They're complex. There's a background. These characters have emotions, and most traditionally, the fairy tales are quite traumatic. If you've ever read the traditional fairy tales, I know Disney makes it seem all pretty and dolled up for children, but reality is these fairy tales actually have very dark underlinings that I kind of really enjoyed exploring in Children of the Empire, because most often I feel those dark underlining themes kind of get skipped over. People don't really want to talk about them or deal with them. And I feel like that takes away from the concept of the original story itself.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that when you retell the story over several generations, probably hundreds of years, the society at that time will put their own slant on it. So for example, in Victorian times, they wanted to say that Snow White was all about being a perfect woman. In a perfect woman in a man's world, we might think completely differently. But the Grimm brothers, when they saw it, they might have said, "Yeah, be scared of men and be scared of older ladies or whatever." Beware of witches or whatever. So we have to all look at it in a different way, and that's why I think they've lasted so well and so long.
Yeah, I agree.
Your own story, does that have any deterrence messages or any morals?
Yeah, so one of the things that is a big thing for me and that I kind of always incorporate somewhere in my writing is mental health, because I deal with my own depression and my own anxiety and PTSD. And I feel that's a very real thing that many people struggle with that kind of just gets pushed under the carpet. It's not really something, it's more easier for people to talk about cancer than it is about a mental illness. Wow. So in the stories, you will see, yes, the evil queen is obsessed with being perfect. Not so much beautiful, but that immortality. She's that superficial person who she's very materialistic, and she seeks all materialistic things, whether it's beauty, land, power, immortality. And I think that's true for many people. Many people seek success, fame, fortune. We all, want some level of something, right? That we justify to ourselves as a goal. My goal might not be a goal for you, and you might look at my goal and be like, hey, if that's what you want, But one of the things you're going to see is these fairy tale characters, and mostly Snow White. The first few books, especially the first book, is really focused on her story, but there are other fairy tale tellings in there. There's Rapunzel, Beauty and the Beast, Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty comes into play. So you're going to see some other characters, and you're going to see them struggle with things, struggle with self-doubt. Snow White is not as confident. She was almost murdered. She doesn't want to be princess anymore. Why would you? It almost got her killed, and that in and of itself is traumatic. A lot of things that happen in fairy tales are traumatic. Rapunzel was kidnapped. That's traumatic. To be attempted murder, that's traumatic. To be abused by your stepsisters, that's traumatic. There is a lot of trauma in these stories that I wanted to bring out and show that these characters, we hold, especially Disney princesses, to such a high standard. I mean, at least in America, we do, Disney kind of reigns supreme over here. And that's fine. I like Disney. But there's no element of reality to them. They're just kind of these pretty princesses who, do some things on their own. Sometimes they're brave, sometimes they fight. You have Belle, she's more stubborn, she's educated, and then you have your more traditional, like Snow White, who's kind of more helpless in her story than other princesses. So for me, I just thought that the trauma that these fairy tale characters experience, I wanted to bring a light to that, because that makes them real, at least to me. That's something I can relate to. I can relate to a princess who is struggling with her image. How does she deal? She went from being this praised, beautiful, she's the fairest in the land, to now she's on the run and she's trying to hide out and just kind of stay alive and survive. And in a way, isn't that what we're all trying to do? Survive?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, what we've learned, haven't we, ourselves in our modern world, is that being a princess isn't a very easy thing, is it? And
exactly.
Yeah. So we've all learned that. And it's interesting to be able to look at somebody who lives in a castle and they've got a huge amount of wealth and they can have a pick and choose of whoever they want as their spouse, and they still have difficulty with their life on a very sort of basic level.
Exactly. I mean, I would imagine, even real royalty in today's society struggles on some level with self-doubt, self-image, I mean, but I couldn't imagine being paraded in front of the whole entire world. You're being judged constantly. I mean, that's what they're doing. They're constantly being compared. I mean, you see it in the news lines endlessly. So, I mean, to me, there would have to be some kind of a level of an anxiety there. I mean, just for myself, thinking about, being in front of all those people, everyone judging me, looking at me, what am I doing? And that does come into play because in the story, because that is real, that is something that I would imagine real royals in today's society face.
Yeah, I agree. So do you have any magic in these stories as well?
Yes, there is magic. There's different types of magic. So we have mages, which is Prince Xavier, who ends up being Snow White's Prince Charming, or, Prince, whatever you want to call him. I know Prince Charming's more Cinderella, but I think everybody just kind of uses that as a general term nowadays. Describe the prince in a story. And I do joke about that in the story. That does kind of come into play about him being Prince Charming and kind of how that whole nickname begins to start for just the princes in general. So there are mages, and they are more focused around like an arcane magic. You have shamans, which would be, so each empire or each kingdom in the empire, so the mages are their own kingdom. They have their own role in that society. And their magic is arcane, and they tend to have the more powerful magic out of all of them. Magic is not created equal in my world. So I know some worlds have it where everyone can kind of do the same amount of magic, but not this. It's all different types. Then you have your shamans, which is more of your elemental. That is where your Beauty and the Beast story is going to come into play. Then you have fairies. They have a very basic magic. That is where your Cinderella story is going to come into play, because Cinderella is a fairy, and you're going to see a really fun twist on the fairy godmother with that one. Then you have your elves, which is Rapunzel's story. She is an elf, and they are centered around healing magic. I just always love the idea of Lord of the Rings, the elves being centered around healing magic, and then kind of being in the medical field myself. I always love to add a little bit of a healing aspect to my worlds with magic. And then you have your dwarves. They have no magic. Your dwarves and humans have zero magic. They are kind of, I guess, the ones to keep everybody balanced, so to speak. Fairies are, their magic is very kind of minor compared to like the shamans and the elves and the mages. So there's different levels. Each kingdom of their own has their own society, their own type of things that, rank higher. For example, in the Mage Kingdom, somebody called a Grand Mage, which is an extremely esteemed title that is very difficult to come by. They actually rank higher than the king itself in that particular kingdom. So there's a lot of world building. There's a lot of different societies. And it's also how those societies come together to form the empire and work together to build the world that they, this wholesome. I think everybody, in a sense, wants a type of utopia, a type of peace. No one really wants to fight in a war or have conflict that is constantly detrimental to the country, to their particular kingdom, and that that applies in real life as well, as we see everything that is happening in today's world. So there's definitely magic. There's magical items, there's magical creatures, ogres, there's a basilisk. We bought in some dragons, of course, baby dragons. Dragons play a huge part in our household. So both my fiance and I, we both love dragons. So of course I had to bring dragons in. I couldn't just leave that out. So it's there's a lot of good magic and world building that comes into play.
Everybody knows these stories since they were knee-high to a grasshopper, since they're 4. But with people like us who are writing fantasy, we have to figure it all out. And it sounds to me like you've been sitting there since the age of 4 thinking, well, how would that work with that? And how would that do that with that? And we kind of have to... It reminds me of when I was a young boy and I was being brought up and my mum was knitting. She used to do a lot of knitting, but we didn't have enough money for yarn. So she would actually go and get a pullover from a second-hand shop, from a thrift shop, and then undo the yarn and then put it back together again as a new item. And
oh, wow, that's impressive.
Yeah, and that's something that they would have done quite, I mean, it was often done in sort of post-war England, because people...
Yeah.
Obviously, people like me, the toddler in the house, our job was to unwind all of the wool. Then you would put it in the bath, let it sort of soak, and then it turns back into the original wool. But that's exactly. It's a long way of explaining that. That's to me
yes.
what you've been doing. You've been unpicking the story
yes.
and then pushing them all together in a new form. That's how it sounds.
Exactly. Yeah, basically, it's picking apart the story, finding the elements that I like or relate to or want to focus on, and putting them all together in a world. It's so very... There are dozens of retellings of fairy tales. I mean, the amounts of movies, books, shows is unfathomable. Yeah. The list could go on and on. But what I often don't find is them interacting together. And that's one of the reasons I really liked Once Upon a Time. I really liked seeing all the different fairy tale characters interact, because that was so interesting. It's never really been done before. Oh. I really enjoyed that concept. And so when I was kind of going through these stories and figuring out which ones do I want to pull in for at least this particular first set of books, because I will most likely end up, as the books go on, pulling other fairy tales and other things into the world, because it's fun and why not? Yeah. If it fits into the story, So picking apart these, my personal, one of my all-time favorites, I won't lie, is Beauty and the Beast. I have always loved Beauty and the Beast. It was my favorite as a kid. I spammed the movie probably more times and drove my mom insane with it. That was always my favorite. Ironically, I didn't actually start liking Snow White until I was much more older. I never really personally enjoyed the animated version that Disney produced. I just always thought it never spoke to me as a kid for whatever reason. And I would always pay attention to like whatever retellings were done, whatever movies would come out, because those were a little bit more like my style, I guess. And then when I saw Once Upon a Time, it really, really reopened Snow White for me. And I was like, wow, I really need to go back and look at the story and kind of, pay a little bit more attention to this character and to her story, because, wow, this is really interesting. And what have I been missing? So that had me go back and reevaluate that story. And of course, I had to bring in Beauty and the Beast. Why not? It's my favorite. And then, of course, Cinderella is a classic. I mean, Cinderella is probably one of the ones that's been done more than any of them, I would say. I think Cinderella has been done in so many different ways and so many different movies and TV shows that I can't even keep track. One of my personal favorite renditions is Ever After, though. Absolutely love that version, and have ever since I watched it. I think I was probably like a preteen when it came out, and I've always spammed that movie. So I had a lot of fun, and it wasn't just going back. It was rereading all the old tales, kind of researching these characters and other takes on them. What have other people seen in these characters? There's a lot of research that went into this, not just about fairy tales, but about the magic that goes in there, the type of creatures that go in there. There's a lot of research that goes into world building.
Cinderella is unbelievably old, kind of ancient Egyptian, possibly earlier than that. I mean,
yeah, it's been around for so long. I mean, and the amounts of renditions of Cinderella, I mean, you see it everywhere. Even if it's not an official Cinderella remake, the concept behind it is heavily focused and used. Even just the concept of the story of the evil stepsisters alone has been reused and redone so many times.
So how does your new stories compare with Shatter Me, The Awakening?
So Shattered, that was probably the first real series I ever wrote. Wrote that probably about 5 years ago now. And that is a more of like a paranormal romance. There's focus heavily on like witches, and it's set more in a modern society. Children of the Empire is a little bit different. It's a little bit more fantasy based. It's a little bit, there is obvious elements of our real world in there, especially when you are in the curse, when you're in Snow White's curse and you see this kind of dystopian. There's a lot of hints to our world. And the reason I did that is, we always say these fantasy worlds are new to us. There are these things that we want to explore, and they're so new and they're so different. I mean, who wouldn't want to go to Middle Earth? I mean, I'm sorry, but I love Lord of the Rings, read all the books, grew up on it. I mean, if I could go to Middle Earth, if that could be a vacation, a real vacation destination, I would so be there. But, what if our world is the fantasy world to them? So that's where that concept kind of comes in of, this world, you're going to see it. It's dystopian. You'll see lots of elements of our world in there. But that's actually the strange part, that's strange to them. You'll see even kind of Xavier be like, this is weird. This is not like, it's a distorted version of our world, as he's trying to figure out how to break this curse, because it's a little bit more than true love's kiss. And there's a little bit more to it than just, oh, he's going to kiss her. He actually has to go into her subconscious and try to pull her, almost her soul basically out of the curse. So there's a lot of complexity. There's no just, a peck on the lips and we're done here. Because that's too easy. So, and I mean, if you're going to be a diabolical evil queen, you got to be, you don't want the person that you're poisoning to come back. You got to make it a little bit harder than just a kiss on the lips awakes her, in my opinion. If I was an evil queen and I was plotting against my stepdaughter and I was like, I don't want her to come back at all, I'm going to make the curse that I put you on pretty difficult to break. So I made her a little bit more diabolical and a little bit more, I guess, I don't want to say clever because that might come off wrong, but a little bit more in depth with her scheming. Let's go with that. So the difference between Shattered and Children of the Empire is just different types of stories, different elements. I mean, there is an element, obviously, of world building that obviously had to go into Shattered because you are building a whole magical community amongst witches and covens, and how does their society work versus the human society, and you're having the human and the magical society kind of collide in certain aspects, and how does that work? Are all humans aware? And so there's a lot of world building that goes into that. I think a lot of time with paranormal stories or romances, or even sci-fi for that matter, people just kind of don't think about the world that's being created. At least, there's a lot that goes into it. There's a lot of society, a lot of, even if it's set in our world, in modern times in the USA or England or wherever, it's still a world that has to be built, because you're adding in an element that doesn't actually exist in our world. There's no, as far as I know, there's no magic. It would be cool if there was, but I haven't found any. So, it's similar in the sense that there was a world that had to be built. Emmy does kind of struggle with certain things. You see her dealing with her anxiety and her, she always wanted to be somebody. Now she is somebody. And now she's kind of like, all right, now that I am somebody, why did I want to go back to being invisible? So there's a lot of elements in that aspect that you might see. But overall, they're pretty different stories, pretty different types of genres. There might be some similarities you might find, but overall, I think they're kind of separate.
You've been quite rightly praised for your world building. We've talked about it quite a lot. What would you give as the sort of top tips for somebody who's maybe just starting out in fantasy fiction? What would be your top tips for world building?
Yes. I will say world building is a very complex thing that I think often gets overlooked and kind of pushed under the carpet. I mean, you look at all of the worlds that have been built, Middle Earth, Game of Thrones with all of their stuff, even J.K. Rowling with Harry Potter. I mean, she built a whole magical world inside a human world. It is, even like when you get into stuff like Doctor Who and things like that, into your sci-fi, there's a type of world building that goes into it that I just think people, it's like, oh, they get the finished product, readers, viewers, they get the finished product. They don't realize all the time, the tears, the sweat that go into a book, but let alone your world building. One of the things that I think is key into world building is you have to ask yourself a lot of questions. What society do you have in your world? How does that society function? Are there multiple societies and how do they function all together? What are the rules? What are laws that might be set? What is your type of law enforcement for that matter? Who rules your world? Is it an empire? Is it just one king? Is it no one? Is it, you have to figure these type of things out. Those little minor details all add up to the big picture. So definitely, it's a lot of asking yourself a lot of questions. The world is what you create it to be. And it's a lot of figuring out what you want. And you might think, oh, I really want this. But then when you actually go to apply it, it doesn't fit into your world because you're like, oh, wait a minute, that kind of contradicts. So it's a lot of tedious work. It's a lot of minor detail that you have to pay attention to because inconsistency can happen if you're not paying attention to those details. And I've caught myself doing it dozens of times. I'll be halfway through a story and I'll be writing something. And as I'm going back through the edits, I'll be like, oh, crap, that doesn't add up. So, and there's a lot of reworking, a lot of rewriting in stories in general, but even with the world building, especially because as you develop the story, you find your world might change. The rules might change. There might be something that changes, or as you come up with a different idea for the story, or your story takes a different turn, your world also may take a different turn. Your world, I found personally, the world that you create in your world building follows your story, at least for me. You got to figure out your story, you got to figure out your world, and they kind of all come together to make that final product. But world building can be very frustrating. I keep notebooks everywhere. I have notebooks all over my house of different ideas, of different things. And I always write down, like, as I get ideas for a world or whatever I'm particularly working on, I literally will keep a notebook with specifics about the world, about the, like, so for Children of the Empire, for example, I actually have it on me. It happens to be next to me, but you'll see all the little notes about my world, about how they function. For Children of the Empire, every kingdom has a different role inside the empire. I had to figure out what those roles were, and then how they function in the empire, but also individually in their own kingdoms. So notebook keeping, or if you want to do it on the computer, whatever you prefer, I would say definitely keep notes, keep a notebook specifically dedicated to that story and to that world that you're creating. It will help you so much. And it also help you find inconsistencies as well. Do
you do any diagrams or maps or graphs or?
Yeah, I am working on a map. So I'm not a great drawer. That's just not one of my talents. I really wish it was. I would love to draw the worlds that I create in my head, but that's just not one of my talents, and I accept that. So I am working on designing a map for Children of the Empire. We're looking into the couple different ways. I know there's a couple different things, or maybe acquiring a graphic artist who could help as well. So I'm looking into it, but there will be a map that I am going to have eventually drawn up. I have an idea of it, of how I kind of want it. I have even, to help make the map, kept a list of like areas, like significant things like forests, mountains, whatever that would have to be labeled onto the map so that I could easily be like, okay, this is where this needs to go. So hopefully with the second book, I hope to have that map ready to be published with it.
How do you find the time to do all these when you're looking after baby dragons?
It is a balance for sure. We have our good days and we have our bad days. Right now, they're actually being pretty good playing with each other. I'm keeping an eye in the corner of my eye. They're being pretty good playing with each other right now. But I actually purposely have my desktop is set up actually right outside of their playroom, so I can just sit and write and work and keep an eye on them. And if they need something, they also like to kind of like, I'll also sit with them. Like if they want to see what I'm doing, they're always interested in what mommy's doing. So I'll let them come and see, mommy's writing, or, what mommy's doing at the computer. My keyboard has different like lights and things. So they absolutely I think they're more fascinated with the lights than what I'm actually doing, to be honest. But I do have that purposely set up. I will find time, it's honestly, I never really schedule when I'm going to write. It's just kind of, I have the chance to do it. I'm going to take an advantage to do it. Sometimes like if they're taking a nap and I don't feel the need to nap, then I'll write then. Or if they go to bed early and the husband and I don't really have any plans, it's just kind of, he's doing his thing, I'm doing my own thing. So I'll find time in that aspect. I will tell you, there are days where I can get so much done in writing. And then there are days where I get so it is a fine line and a fine balance.
Yeah. Well, you've done very well indeed. I mean, when you listen to people who say, well, I can't find the time to do it, and you think, well, you don't do anything else. I don't know why you don't find the time. But it's discipline, isn't it? It's kind of self-discipline, it's motivation. And if it's rewarding for you, which it is for me, and I'm sure it is for you, then
it is.
Do it. Yeah.
And honestly, I also purposely will find time to write because it is very therapeutic for me.
Yeah.
I mean, even after all these years, I still have depression. I still have my anxiety. And while it's controlled and maintained, there's still days, where it can get to me. And writing has just always been a fantastic outlet. Yeah. And not only that, but if I have an idea brewing in my head, I have to get it out. Like it's just one of those things where like, it will almost drive me to a point of madness if I can't get that idea down, even if it's as simple as just writing it in a notebook, just to have the concept down and then go and transfer it into like an actual, the writing part. It is challenging, but I always will find the time in some capacity because it's important. And it is that like you said, there's motivation behind it. There's a therapeutic motivation behind it. There's also just because I want to get these books written, I want to keep the series going. I have about 6 books actually planned for Children of the Empire. I'm going to try very hard to make that happen. I'm working on the second book currently. First 2 books are all about Snow White and Beauty and the Beast and all about them. And then your second 2 books are going to be about their children. Then your 5th and 6th books are going to be about their grandchildren. We're going down the line. How the family of Snow White and the family of Cinderella, how do their children and grandchildren, how do you be descendants of someone so grand? How do they have their own stories to tell, these fairy tale characters, in a sense, the concept of, falling in love and being together, getting married. And, obviously the natural thing is to have children. They obviously want to keep their kingdom going, their bloodline going, isn't that the big thing, got to keep it all going. So how does that affect their story? How does that affect their children? How does the child of Snow White go from, her mother is a hero, she's this grand person. Her father is a grand mage. How does the daughter and the sons of these grand, essentially heroes, how do they live? How do they get by? Is it stressful being in the shadow? Do you feel like you need to be better than your parents? What are these? I want to explore that. And then, even with their grandchildren, how does that work? How do you work being so far? Are they still living in the shadow of their grandmother? Yeah. So there's a lot of things that I want to kind of, and in the process, bring in other fairy tales and bring in other stories, bring in other elements. So it's very fun for me. I'm having a lot of fun. It's a lot of research, though. I don't think people quite realize the research that goes into books in general. People think you just write a book, right? That's it. You just sit down at your computer and you type a book up. That's what people think, but there's so much more than that. There's a type of production, a casting, it's more than just sitting down at a desktop and typing up words.
Once I did a little meme and I counted about 70 jobs. That's probably not even right, but I counted 70 separate jobs that we have to do as the author.
Oh, yeah. And it's not just writing and world building, then it's networking and promoting and getting yourself out there and notice. I think anything in the art world, whether you're an actor, singer, no matter what you're doing in the art world, whether it's writing, there is an element of networking. There is an element of getting yourself out there, of promoting yourself, promoting your work. Getting it in front of readers is a big thing. I'm working on that right now to get the book in front of readers, to get reviews, to get out there, to get, you want your name out there, because once your name's out there, then people go, oh, we release new books. We want those readers to come back to us. You want that, a following basically is what we're building. We're building kind of our own little following we're doing.
Yeah, and we have to be good at we have to tick off every single thing. You can't say, oh yeah, I'm really good at marketing. I think my world building is really good. People keep saying that my character's nice, but I'm really awful at choosing a cover, or I'm really awful at writing blurbs. No, you've got to be good at every single one.
Everything. And your book covers are just as important as your blurb, and your blurb is just as important as the story itself. I mean, it's complex. I mean, there's a lot that it's not just sitting at a computer and writing it up, and there's all the footwork behind it, all of these things. And then once it's, finally all edited, it's finding a book cover and putting it out, where if I was a producer, I could be like, all right, I'm going to give this to the director. I'm going to give this to the casting designer. I'm going to give this to this person. I can't, you're right. You can't do it. You're literally one person doing probably 10 to 15 or more jobs. Yeah. I always edit my work before I give it off to my editor. You know what I mean? And I edit it, go through it several times, and then she goes through it several times, and we pass it back and forth. And it's a whole, that's probably several weeks in and of itself, just editing. And, she's going through things, I'm going through it, passing it back and forth, getting it ready to actually go to print, picking out covers, making sure you're writing a good description and a blurb. I mean, it is so much more than just sitting at a computer writing, and that, to me, I will say, I feel like the writing is probably the easiest part out of it.
So who's your perfect reader for this? Is it young adult?
I would say there is some explicit content. It's not like nowhere near an erotica by no means. It's not that level of heat. But there are a few scenes that have some heat in them. There is definite language. Not all princesses, I know, are supposed to be poised and proper, but sometimes, the occasional F-bomb might get dropped. So I would say if you're 17, make sure you're a mature 17-year-old. I was a mature 17-year-old reading adult books. I was probably, honestly, if I'm being honest, probably at 16, I was reading adult books with actual, explicit scenes. Yeah. But I was mature enough to handle that. I wasn't laughing at it. I was like, oh, this is interesting. Okay. I would say if you're 17, I know there are plenty of mature 17-year-olds out there that can handle it, but definitely 18 or older would be my most suggestion, just because of the language, just because of the handful of scenes. There's probably about 3 scenes in the first book that are definitely heated, but like I said, nowhere near, it's not HBO worthy. Let's put it that way.
So do you picture a 18-year-old in your mind when you're writing this, or are you writing for yourself aged 18, or would you bounce this actually would you actually have a first reader, maybe your ARC readers are 18?
So I will say that with Children of the Empire, I kind of wrote that more probably 18 and older, probably to about 40, 45, with a little bit more language in depth, with a little bit more cursing, a little bit more sprinkled out, a little bit more of the scenes, like I said, a little bit more heat to them. So for this particular series was definitely more focused on the adult, kind of the older, kind of around my age, I'm 31, so kind of people around that age, maybe a little younger, older, for this particular book.
So that's out now, is it, that particular book? The first in the series is already out, is it?
For Children of the Empire, yes. The first one, Children of the Empire, World on Fire, is out. It's available on Amazon. It's Kindle version right now. We are getting paperback, hopefully by the weekend. Fingers crossed. We ran into some formatting issues, and I'm sure you know all about those. We're working on it. So we're hoping this weekend, fingers crossed, that we will get it paperback. It is on Amazon. I'm looking to get it, obviously in other, iTunes and stuff. I'm just waiting to get that paper. Right now, I'm just focused on getting the paperback fixed and ready before I can put it on everything else. But most likely, iTunes and Barnes & Noble's, Books A Million. I'm looking to get it on there, but I know mostly Amazon is everyone's go-to for books these days. They're kind of a must-have. So right now, just on Amazon. But like I said, we're working on getting that paperback out and then expanding to the other retailers. The book was just released on May 17th, so it's still fairly new. We're still in that early process of getting it out there production-wise. But the first book of Children of the Empire is out. If anyone is interested in looking at the Shattered series, that is on the Read Addict app. That is exclusively just there. So that is for Shattered, but Children of the Empire, Amazon. World on Fire is the first book. Reflected Mirrors will be the second book. And I hope to have that out by the end of the year.
Nice.
I'm working hard.
Yeah.
While also working on a couple other projects. I have a standalone and another series I'm trying to work on. So I always say I have a million ideas bouncing around in my head. Even when I'm working on something specific, I always have other things going on in my head, idea-wise.
How will readers and listeners find out about you then? Where's the best place to go?
So I have Instagram and I have Facebook. I have an author page and right now a page for the Shattered series. I'll probably get a page up for Children of the Empire, but you can go there. I have Goodreads. I'm on Goodreads as well. And I also have an Amazon author profile. So there's over the 4 different places. Probably, honestly, to be honest, your best bet is Facebook right now. That's my easiest thing for me to maintain. And then I get Instagram here and there. As you can hear my railing cry and my dragons in the background. Give me Okay, I apologize for that. When the iPad decides to not work, all hell will break loose.
Yeah.
Say check out Birdy Rivers on Facebook. I have a page up. That's actually where I keep most of my updates. New releases, updates on my writing. You'll get updates on baby dragons as well. So that's probably your most place to get best information.
Brilliant. Well, it's been fantastically exciting talking to you. Maybe you'd like to come back after the reflections and the Hall of Mirrors.
Yes, I would love to come back. I really appreciate you having me. And as for fans, I mean, seriously, if you have a question, please message me on my Facebook page or Instagram. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear any comments, any suggestions, just whatever you feel that is good. I love hearing from fans. I think all authors do.
I agree with you. We need to hear from them, don't we? We do need to hear.
Yes, we do. It's always great to hear from readers who enjoyed the work.
Thank you very much indeed. Good luck with that paperback launch. So good luck with that paperback launch.
Thank you.
Good luck with the second part of the series, and good luck with your standalone as well.
Oh, thank you. And taming my baby dragons. That's what I say. I'm taming baby dragons. That's what I do all day. I'm a dragon tamer.
Lovely talking to you. Bye.
All right. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye-bye.